So thank you all for being here. My name is Marianne Chick, and I am the statewide Risk Management and Privacy Program Manager for the Office of Information Security. My worthy counterpart here is Patrick McGuire. He has come back to our office as a retired annuitant to help us out, and he's doing a bang-up job. We're going to tag team this, and he's going to make all the important points that I forget. So, and he's way funnier than I am. So, speaking of funny, I intend to have a little fun with this. So when I'm doing the demonstration of the tool, I pre-populated it with different big organizations, and I'm going to ask you to rate them. So if you'll just help me out there by participating in that, and we'll have fun with it. Then we can get to a final score to show you how it all works. But I pre-populated most of it so that we don't spend a lot of time using the entire tool. The other thing is that when Mark Weatherford hired me for the job at, I was a disaster recovery coordinator first for 2.5 years. But he used to say all the time, we have a serious job to do, but we don't have to take ourselves seriously. And I've carried that with me for the whole time I've worked for the office. We all have a serious job to do, but we can have fun with it. And that is my intent today. So let's start with a comic. And I'll let you read that. If, hopefully you can read that in the back. If otherwise, I'll read it for you. Can you read it back there? No. Okay. No. It says, this workstation is still logged into the network, and this is the boss. He says, it's time to teach someone a lesson about security. I'll just go in here and, warning, warning, idiot alert. Gah! Activating defense system, wedgie system. Dilbert says, I have to go. Some idiot violated my perimeter. And the boss is back. Please make it stop, Dilbert. Then how would you learn? So, on our agenda for today, we're going to talk about a capability maturity model, what it is, how it can help in our environments. We're going to talk about establishing a baseline CMM using a risk assessment, and in our case, we'll be using the Office of Information Security's assessment tool. We'll talk a little bit about risk management, and there are 3 processes, best practices, and then we'll demonstrate the tool, and then we'll bring it back around to the baseline CMM so you can see how it connects. Then we'll talk about process improvement a little bit and get to questions. Another little comic. I'll read it again. So this is one I found on CMM. Boss, we're going to use CMM. It's a model for developing a process to create a framework. Next slide. Or it might be a process for creating a framework to make a model. Finally, there's no budget for training, so we'll be relying on guessing more than usual. So I'm not alone. My challenge was to find a model that fit what we do. I wasn't completely successful, but successful enough. So what is a capability maturity model? And the best quote I came up with is, a capability maturity model presents a predefined maturity growth path that an organization can follow to improve its processes. So really, and it relates to the degree of formality and the optimization of your processes. I included the name of a guide that I found that quote in. It's a really good guide. It's very short, and I highly recommend it. I'm not even paying attention to my notes at all. I hope I'm not missing anything important. Have I?
Nope.
You haven't jumped in. What's the matter with you?
How many people are familiar with the general concept of capability maturity models? First was introduced out of Carnegie Mellon University through the Software Engineering Institute, and it was a method by which they were measuring how capable a process is. and it has since been propagated to many other domains, industries, bodies of knowledge. You see it in the PMBOK for PMP certification. You see a model over there for information security. It's kind of tough. I think it's a good way of grading, of evaluating, and putting some type of measurement on how well an organization is doing in just about any area of expertise. In security, how well are you doing your overall perimeter protection? How well are you doing in antivirus? Or how well are you doing as an organization as you measure up against a set of controls like the 800-53 controls that are described in NIST? I think the state of California should come up with their own capability maturity model, so we have a common lexicon and measuring tool that everybody is applying uniformly across, at least in security, perhaps in other areas of the business, but certainly in security. And if Marianne has her way, that might be something that we will see. We've monkeyed around with several different descriptions of the various layers, and some of it will be represented in this presentation.
Perfect. Right to the next slide, which is the levels. There are typically 5 levels. Sometimes there's a level 6, which is 0. And 0 means there's nothing in place. The level 1, things are performed informally, ad hoc, nothing real formalized. Level 2 is planned and tracked and repeatable, and I think this is probably where most processes lie. Level 3, well documented. Level 4, validation and measurable goals. And so here is where you can establish metrics and do baselines and maturity through that process too. And level 5 is continuously improving, and probably really maybe difficult to achieve is not the right word, but not a lot of people are at level 5.
And that's true in private industry and in government. Level 5 are often the Malcolm Baldrige Award winners, the ones that are back in the TQM days, where they achieved self-actualization. I mean, they're really, you know, pumping on all cylinders. Yes.
I'm thinking that 5 isn't necessarily, at least in what we're doing, we're developing a process and we haven't got our documentation down to a key.
Right.
Pretty good, but we're constantly rather improve than go to that validation.
And we'll get to that too.
Okay, so it isn't necessarily.
I'll make a point, yeah.
In sequence.
Right. So your different processes will probably be in at different levels. So to level set, I kind of like you to think about your own organizations and where your processes might be in these levels, at which capability you think they might be. We have some states that are at level 1. Most are probably at level 2. Some level 3, level 4, highly unusual. And if you break your security program to its constituent components, some may have a 0, some of your processes. We didn't even talk about level 5. So, does that give you an idea of, okay.
Yeah, because an organization may measure out at 2 or 3, but within that organization, they have some, like she said, constituent processes that are just right on, and they're up in the 4.5 range, and they're working very, very well. Case in point, often a firewall administrator may have a really good process for entering requests, making changes, change control. All that is working great, but they
Camera can't hear you.
But they cannot manage their antivirus very well, and they get a lot of virus alerts. So it's not all in one. It can be broken down to its individual components.
Thank you. Sorry about that. Okay, so now we'll talk a little bit about risk management. There are the 3 processes, and we're going to focus on the orange ones. Does that look orange to you? Yeah. Risk assessment is the first process in risk management, and the third process is the evaluation, the ongoing and evolving evaluation. And if you want more information, I've got some links too. Part of your slides has some links, but we also have, this came from the Information Security Program Guide for State Agencies, which is on our website. And then we've got more information in the Risk Assessment Toolkit. Okay, this one's even smaller, sorry. Okay, here's Dilbert. And of course, we'll assess our progress along the way. Will you be using an enhanced assessment methodology? I hope that means something. All I did was string together some words I heard in the hallway. I'll be assessing by measuring, and I'd better get in on this. I can't support this project until I see your advanced assessment methodology plan. I'll have it to you in 10 minutes, assuming you don't know what it's supposed to look like. Very good. I'll be in the shower trying to wash my soul. Okay. So, you probably all already know this. This comes from SAM 5305.1. So the risk assessment, cyclical, required every 2 years, and should include these components. I won't go over each of them individually, but you can find them at that link that I provided, and it's in your notes. Risk assessment best practices. You need to assign an individual, and it's usually the ISO, to lead the risk assessment. You want to appoint a team of relevant business and IT personnel. And I think I have a list of, the examples of that are, you might want a legal there, HR, line of business, management, CIO, and of course, the ISO. Through a comprehensive business impact analysis, you want to identify the agency's information assets and then categorize them and prioritize those assets based on classification and criticality. Patrick was saying in our last session that state of California, we have a lot of trouble with classification, and oftentimes we'll just say it's all important. So it gets expensive that way, but classification is really important, and I think we're going to start focusing on that a little bit more too. And then in the context of the agency's planning, acquisition, and change management processes, you have to select and implement the cost-effective protective measures. You document the results in a report to management. Then you document and preserve those management decisions regarding the accepted level of risk. And then develop the work plan to address the most critical risks and track their progress toward remediation. And this will come full circle later, you'll see. So after you've done all this, here's the report. We'll need a risk analysis on this project before I can approve it. Dilbert says, risk 1, indecisiveness. Risk 2, overanalysis. Risk 3, cluelessness. Risk 4, micromanagement. Boss says, I don't understand these risks. Dilbert says, that's number 36. So, the assessment tool for state agencies is recently updated and redistributed, repackaged a little bit, and it's on our website, available on our website. It's one of several in the toolkit on our website. It currently aligns with the ISO 17799-2005 standards. It delves into the risk categories, provides that scoring tool, as you'll see, the one we're going to have fun with, and then it's focused towards that team we talked about. All right. Now, instead of doing, oh, yes, Patrick, please jump in.
Before you see the tool, I'd like to just take a couple minutes to kind of explain it. The tool was developed back in 2008 on a collaborative work group for the state of California. It had, 20 members, came and went, met, kind of developed an overarching, general, high-level tool and populated an Excel spreadsheet. The only thing that happened most recently when we released a technology letter re-announcing that tool was that we changed some of the presentation side of the tool. And so it's got some automation to it, it's got some links, it has some additional calculations, but in essence it's using a standard, and like it says 17799, which is kind of passé, yet it still holds that information is valid and can be seen in more mature risk assessments. This is a very high level, and as you will see by the tool, it lends itself well to doing a general, overarching, organizational evaluation that plugs into a capability maturity model that we're kind of a 2, we're kind of a 2.5, almost 3, and you can look at the individual scores that an organization may give itself in the component questions and decide that we need to spend some time on this particular activity, this requirement, or we are in pretty good shape on this one. So use it for what it's worth. It is an interim tool, and one of many that are out there. There's several that are out there. One is a simple checklist. Another one is this one here, which has some scoring capabilities. And then there's some links to a more advanced one that takes you out, again, to the federal government to evaluate based upon the controls in the special publication 853 from NIST. What we would like to see longer term, and I'm convinced that we'll get there, is to have a statewide GRC, which is a governance, risk, and compliance tool. And this would be one case where build it and they will come, where in other areas of IT delivering a business solution, it's the business that should come to IT and tell IT what they need. This tool here has known parameters. This is not rocket science. It's been out there, and these methodologies have been there for a long time. The tool really gives it some structure, and it allows you to evaluate an organization and its risk and its governance based upon standards that are out there. And you can pick and choose within the tool. At one time, we had a project that was ginning up to actually do that. Found some money and we were putting it together, but we were diverted from that. I'd like to get back on track. So when you look at this tool, somewhat simplistic, very valuable, and it plugs nicely into a CMM model, but the future really is a more robust governance, risk, and compliance program. So if you get a chance to do a little research on GRC generally and some of the tools that are out there, please do so, because it, for the state people in the room, it's in your future. So back to Marianne.
Thank you. Okay, we're not going to do the online version. Like I said, I pre-populated Okay, so you start out, there's a table of contents and an intro page over here. So the table of contents, those links will jump you to the different sections of the tool. So each time you go to one of those pages, you can jump back too, so that it's easy to navigate. Then there's an introduction part. It talks about the tool, it gives you additional guidance, and so forth. Section, the profile, just kind of a little bit about your organization. So you type in, it's very brief, to the point. And here's where you get into a little bit of meat and potatoes. So first part is, what's the organizational reliance on IT? We're looking right now, we're not having fun yet. We're looking at state organizations. So think about your own organization while we're looking at these questions. And if you would be so kind, throw a number out. If you can see, the scoring does not match CMM. So let's try not to get that confused. The scoring here goes from 0 to 4. Still 5 levels, but 0 to 4. 4 is probably like CMM, probably not as common as a 2. So the section is designed to help determine whether the agency has a high, medium, or low reliance on information technology for business continuity. Your overall security evaluation will depend in part on your agency's reliance on IT. So this page is really important. This is one factor in the 2-factor formula, if I said that right. So this page, try to be as precise as possible. You want to say something, please?
If I could just give a couple of examples. This tool queries you about your organizational reliance on IT. Picture, if you will, the Tahoe Conservancy board, and there's 3 employees. They have 3 computers. They connect to somebody else's network. Somebody else, another department, resources or whatever, provides tech support. And they use their IT for email and some communication. Could they, if you ask them, could they live without their IT, their 3 computers, for a period of time, 48 hours, 48 days, 48 months? And they may say, yeah, we just mainly go to meetings. Somebody else takes notes, does the minutes. They may say that they have little to no reliance on technology. Should they be held to the same level as FTB, who has gone from 20% of their tax filing is electronic to 85%, and there's no way they could go back to paper because they've transitioned to electronic, and the citizens, the taxpayers, wouldn't stand for it anyway. So that's what this is all about, is measuring their reliance on IT. So the example of FTB, huge reliance on technology. They could not conduct business without it. So in that sense, they would be highly reliant.
So I filled out the first couple. The characteristics of the organization, there are 2. They, 2 means high. So they're $1 billion to $10 billion. No, I'm sorry, 2.
The font on that a little bit so we can read it. Just a little small.
Is that possible?
Mm-hmm.
So when we're talking here, we're talking, when you say the characteristics of the organization, that's the organization as a whole. Is that correct? Or the IT organization?
The organization as a whole. How reliant is the organization? Because you're always trying to talk from an organizational level. Your continuity of the organization is reliant, can be reliant on IT, whether that's highly reliant or not so much. It's typically the business and the organization that has the reliance. Does that make sense?
Part of, yeah. Well, we'll just keep going here. Just trying to clarify what I'm seeing so I can put it in context.
Do you want to say something about that?
Only to the extent that IT exists solely for the business functions and has no value beyond that. It's just widgets and bits and bytes and electronic impulses. As far as rating your organization, it would be for the entire organization as far as its budget and its total number of employees, not the micro organization called the IT or the CIO's group.
So that's why you have to get all these other partners in your organization involved in this too. And it's not just their piece, it's All of it, they need to be involved. And then the number of employees, this one rated a 1, which is a low, right? No, what is a, yeah, medium.
Low.
So, oh, very low is 0, low is 1, so it's low. And then the 2 was medium. All right. So the dependence on information technology systems and the internet to offer services to customers, outreach programs, conduct research and support services. How IT dependent are your services in today's connected environment? So think about DMV, Department of Child Support Services, Department of Social Services, CHP, Department of Justice. Those were just some examples I threw out there. If you really think about them, those organizations in particular, how dependent do you think they are on IT? And not just their own IT, but on other organizations' IT. Let me see about an example of that. BOE and FTB is a good example, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you have a great, he used to work at both organizations. So you want to talk a little bit about that? Just an example of a reliance on the other organization?
We live in a connected world. It is the network that makes the business run smoothly. And because we don't host all our information, we are relying on outside entities. I know at BOE, when I was there, we relied a lot on FTB for tax information. When we're doing collections, skip tracing for scofflaws, or we were doing audit, we wanted to find out and cross-reference what they were telling FTB about income tax as opposed to sales tax, let's say, that we were managing at BOE. So we would use their information. We relied on that connection to provide and augment the audit function. It resulted in many millions of dollars in additional revenue because we had access to that information. We also had access to federal tax information from the IRS because often they would tell the IRS, the feds, the truth, but not so much these little podunk state agencies. They might lie to the state because we're less likely to catch them. So you always have to be concerned about those connections in providing continuity to your overall business. If you lose that connection to FTB information, how damaging is that to your audit function? You could probably continue your audit function, but it would be diminished significantly.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So I would say these organizations, probably a 3 or a 4. What do you think?
4.
Okay,
4.
let's say 4.
5.
Well, you don't have a 5. Remember, that's
4.
CMM.
Then a 4.
Okay, I'm going to try and speed through these. So how much change do you suppose is going on in each of those organizations, especially today? Well, you could say budgets are so tight, there's nothing going on. Or you could say we're trying so hard to continue working with fewer resources, there's a lot going on. So I'm going to say this one's a 3. What do you think? Impact to your agency's operations from an internet outage. And I'm talking, okay, how about DMV or Caltrans? CHP? CHP is reliant on DMV information when they write a ticket, for example. They're kind of dependent on it. PSCO, Public Safety Operations, they're the 911 system. CalEMA, let's say 4. Okay. I'm not going to read every one of these. We're not going to go through all these. You can take a look at the tool later on the website. We're just going to get through and score everything so that we can get to the point and show you the connection between. What did you do to this font?
I increased it, audience requested, and I delivered for the audience.
Yes,
so.
you did. Okay. All right. I think you're going to have to do it again.
Story of my life. I zoomed to 150.
Oh, that's easy.
And the arrows add to the navigation. Makes it a little easier.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, now here's the fun part. Say you're responsible for the power grid. What happens with the power grid if something happens to it? That's kind of a big responsibility, and it's kind of reliant on technology today, in today's world. So say, does the power grid, say does SMUD have an agency documented information security and privacy program? Yeah, they do.
Just a quick question on that. What does it mean by document?
So, for example, do you have a response plan in place? Do you have the program documented? Are your people trained?
So would you have something like a checklist to document how you document? I mean, what
You could? Yeah, that would be great. Do we have those for you? No, not yet. That could be coming. Have hope.
Email may have them though, possibly.
They could. They might be a little different. They look at things a little differently than IT does because they're boots on the ground, physical response, and what we do is virtual, cyber. The response is different, but they do have a lot of experience with planning, putting plans together, so they would be a good resource. Okay, have they conducted a risk assessment in the last 2 years? What do you think? Say, yeah, they did. 3?
What if they have, is this based on importance and yes or no? So it would never be 0.
Yeah, that would,
Right.
how would you have I mean, that's a binary question.
Okay, this is just for fun. Don't take it seriously. We're just having fun with this. This is not your organization we're rating or scoring.
I'm just, trying to go through the process.
Okay.
When I get to an organization, I say, have we conducted a risk assessment in the last 2 years? That's either yes or no.
Right, and it's a
So is it a 0 or 4 or what?
that's a good question, really.
Well, there could be some parts did and some didn't, so.
That's
I would say it's a measure of quality. Certainly it's binary. Yes, I did. I didn't do it, so it's a 0. But if I did do one, did I contract out for an independent third party to come in and do a risk assessment, top to bottom, looked at all parts of my organization? If I did that, then I could justify a 4.
And if you look at the scoring, it's different than that last page was.
But if I simply did a one-day workshop with a couple of mid-level managers and some of the technical staff, and I used this tool, and that's all I did, I just met the minimum requirement, I might give a 1 or 2. So it's not a very good scoring technique. That's why we want to improve this.
By the way, my apologies, I didn't introduce this section. Stay there, please. So we're talking about risk management now. The scoring is a little different. So it's not implemented is 0. Planning stages is 1. Partially implemented is 2. Close to completion is 3. And fully implemented is 4. Probably not going to have a lot of 4s, but you never know. Okay, so we're going to say they are close to completion. Have they identified critical assets? This is the power grid. I certainly hope so. What do you think, a 3? Okay, now it's your turn to have fun. Tell me what you think. Have the information security threats and vulnerabilities associated with each of the critical assets and functions been identified? 0? All right. Has the cost been assigned to the loss of each critical asset or function?
1.
Okay, Patrick just reminded me we're running short on time, so I'm going to really zip through these now, if you don't mind. We'll get to the end of this so that we can pull it all together. Now you're back to the state agency and zoom. You said 150?
150.
Okay, scoring is the same as the last. This time it's people. It evaluates the organizational aspects of your information security program. People. So you're a state agency. Do the leaders and staff have the necessary experience and qualifications? Information security function have the authority it needs?
0.
Knew you'd start to have fun. Agency's information security function have the resources it needs?
He does -3.
The responsibility clearly defined, assigned for all areas of information security architecture, compliance, and all that stuff.
We plan to have.
1. Agency have an ongoing training program for information security. All right, one here. Information security report regularly to the executive management on compliance and the effectiveness of the information security and privacy program and policies. 0?
Yeah, the ISO reports to the CIO, remember? There are no executives, they have no access to executive level.
Question?
Question, yeah, you just included privacy on this. It's the first time you mentioned it. So I'm not sure why it's relevant in only this spot.
You want to take that one?
Don't know.
Don't know. David Nelson, Privacy Officer, County of San Diego.
Okay, now we are talking about processes. Same scoring. Identifies the processes that should be part of an information security program. Okay, now you're Adobe. Okay? You know Adobe, right? All of you are familiar with Adobe and our challenges with Adobe?
5 minutes.
Ha, okay. I'm just going to give it numbers, all right? 1. Oops. 0. I don't even know what these say. I'm just scoring, okay? Now you're FEMA. This one. Are there documented procedures in place for granting exceptions to policy? Yes, of course. We're FEMA. All right. 2, 3, 4, 1. AT&T and Verizon. 0. Oops, there's a 0. Boy, I thought I had more filled out than this. All right. And now your Heracles Data Center. Those are all filled out already. Then your Mark Weatherford. He works for DHS now, moved on to bigger and better things. I'm just going to give him all 4s because he's got everything dialed in. All right. Next page. Technology. Zoom. How much time did you say I have? 5 minutes?
Less than that now.
Okay, 2. I think that one you were Microsoft or Apple, but I think most of these are already completed. I'm just going to give 2s all the way down. All right. So we get to the scoring tool. Total score for organizational reliance on IT is a 31. This should be higher. Oh, because I'm looking at the reliance and taking the score, it's a 31. Does that sound right? Okay.
It is what it is.
It is what it is. Okay, a 31 means medium. The medium reliance on IT. And then there's given scores for risk management, people, processes, and technology. The total score is 190 for all of those sections combined. So you take your reliance on IT, which is a medium, and take the total score that you get from all of those different pages, which is 190. And where?
The key.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. And we're at a medium. So you look at the medium column and look for 190. It needs improvement. Do you see that? Okay. Now, so overall, the organizational processes for information security needs improvement. You can take each of those pages individually and score them individually, and that will give you a better idea of where each section is, which will probably be a little more valuable. Okay. I'm going to go back to the slideshow and wrap this up. Okay, as requested, I did a risk management assessment. I concluded that there was no risk of any management. Do you have anything to add? I'll get back to you. Anybody had a boss like that? Okay, so once again, we have the capability levels. Here's where we come back around. Performed individually, planned and tracked, well-documented, validation, continuously improving. So you take your needs improvement, it would probably align with a 1 or a 2 capability level. Then you want to take that, so that's your baseline, and that's where you're going to take your program and begin your improvement. You start there, and every so often you go through that risk process again. You see, okay, where am I now? And if you want to individually score them, that's great, each section. And then you can do that process improvement. Here's another slide I found online. It's called Ideal. Some of you may be familiar with it. It's just another tool that you can use. Many organizations do use it with CMM. But it's a process improvement. So here's the final quote on CMM, and where I was going earlier when I said that we'd get to that. It's not a religion. You should use it as a guide to help you focus your improvement energies where they will likely pay off, rather than simply racing up the maturity scale as fast as you can. Attack your project's real points of process pain instead of treating it as a surefire prescription for curing what ails you. All projects are different, but most can benefit from improvements in the level 2 process areas. And I gave you a link to where that quote is. I thought it is really relevant in today's environment. Okay, so thankfully privacy laws prevent this. Security says your employee locator device isn't turned on. Dilbert says, my what? Boss says, I think you call it a smartphone. Dilbert says, I think I might have some questions. Put them in a text to yourself. I'll read them later. Do you know that the governor signed a couple of bills on the 27th, prohibiting organizations to ask for passwords? So Facebook and all of those social media organizations, they can't do that anymore. So I think that starts January 1st. Okay, so the mission is possible in a roundabout way. And I know we're kind of at the end of time, but I'd like to offer up, if you have any questions. Yes?
What's the ideal approach to taking that assessment if you want to do it for the first time? Is it getting all the relevant people in the room and spending half a day or a day going through all the questions and getting consensus?
Have you worked with an organization to do this, Patrick, yet? Because we're going to be doing that. And I wanted to make that offer, especially for smaller organizations. Patrick and I will come out and help with this, but we'd like to have you have done some of the upfront work before we get there. But I'll let Patrick talk about it for a minute.
I would see our methodology would be similar to what one would use within an organization. When we come out, we would want to profile the organization a bit from our archives of incidents and understanding a little bit more about the organization, and then request our contact put together individuals at key positions in the organization. I like to interview a manager at not too high of a level that has been there a while and understands the overall business model of the organization, and perhaps an IT person or two that can give good information about infrastructure, settings, those type things. So we would put together a list as we do the profile of types of individuals that we would want to talk to and interview and ask these questions of. And so it would depend on the organization. In some cases, it might be more senior management that we'd want to talk to. But again, the tool is a relatively brief tool, high level, and not one that should take a whole lot of time, and probably doesn't lend itself real well to most senior management. And I think that's it. Time is up. Like I said earlier, there was an excellent presentation across the way at the 9 o'clock hour. Got a few handouts. I would recommend that you take it with you. It's got good information and excellent links for doing further research.
Thank you all for being here.